Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is a guitarist songwriter who has a love for horror, Halloween, and cult classics, and is creating one of a kind art fashion for the ghoulish mortals possessed by a spooky lifestyle. Please welcome the creator and owner of DOA Co, Ryan Danley. What's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me. It's going good.
Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I always like to ask the question, what's your go-to lunch or sandwich?
Man, I always tell people like I'm a tiger shark. Like I eat a lot and I'm like open to trying anything and everything. I think it's seasonal, because St. Patty's Day was just around the corner, like, a nice Reuben. Right now, my go-to lately after events has been like a cheeseburger, just like a couple of cheeseburgers after a hot day event. I love a turkey club. I love anything with like avocado. Oh gosh, man, now you're making me hungry, but like I'm pretty open to anything as long as it's not anchovy based. I think that's the only thing where I'll be like, nah, let's stay away from that.
Okay.
So,
Where do
but
you,
a good,
where do you usually get a burger after an event? Like, do you just go fast food, like one of the fast food
yeah.
places, whatever's nearby?
So sometimes, obviously, these events take you to cool, interesting places. So if I can find a local place or a food truck, I would definitely rather that to support the small business. But no, mo most of the time, I hate to say it, but my favorite cheeseburger is from Burger King. So like, it's usually, like when we're coming home from Lakeland or Gainesville or somewhere, it's like just give me three cheeseburgers from Burger King. Let me hit the road. Because the other thing too is like. And I say I love the cheeseburger, but it can make you sleepy. So I don't want to like get too crazy with the food and you have to drive another 2 hours or something.
Yeah.
So usually
No,
just a
man.
quick stop. Yeah, yeah.
No, I get that. That's why I was curious because I was like, when you said that, I was like, usually you're either, unless you're staying in the area, you're kind of like, I need to get out of here because I'm a few hours away.
Yeah, yeah.
So, tell the story of how the idea of creating DOA Co, Death of Absolution, how did that come about? Like, what's the origin story?
Yeah. So actually it's coming up on 10 years next year, which I'm pretty excited about because I can't believe that it's already been almost 10 years. But the origin story was I was in a band and we had just broken up and I was pretty distraught. At that point, when things happen, with bands, it's like you put all this work and effort into it, and then all of a sudden it's just done. And we had, management and a booking agency, so we were pretty serious, and we had put in a lot of work. But I was at Halloween Horror Nights, and I was drunk off my ass, and I was literally just wa looking at all the other shirts, and being in a band, I've been in merch. That's part of it. It's always been a part of it, and I worked at Hot Topic too. So I was sitting there, and this was obviously 2000, like 16, 17, because I think at the end of 16, yeah, is when I kind of was at Halloween Horror Nights starting it up. So I was just like, you know what? Like, I've always loved Halloween. I've always loved horror. I've got the tattoos. I would go to Spooky Empire and all that stuff. And I'm just sitting there going, I can do this, man. Like, I was just looking around at everybody in line and I was just like, I think I have an eye for this. I think I can do this. And I still remember, I still have the notes in my phone to where I was like, okay, what do I want to call it? And I always, with my mom and my grandmother being nurses, I've always, and I was a personal trainer in college, and so I've always kind of been in the medical field, and I always, would think about, anatomy and all that stuff. But I was like, man, DOA, like dead on arrival. But I knew I didn't want to call it dead on arrival. But like, so I had this like little abbreviation DOA. What's it gonna be? Question mark, question mark. And then I think one of the first designs that I had in my head, well, there was two. There was Monster Squad rules instead of Stephen King rules, because I had always seen Stephen King rules, but I'm like, man, if I ever had my own company, I would make that shirt. And then I'm a huge Haunted Mansion fan, and I had always thought to myself, I would never be foolish. I'd always be a ghoulish mortal. So those were the first two that were just like always there, and it was just being in that line at Halloween Horror Nights, being upset, and distraught about my band, kind of, and not being in a band, and going, I need to do something else where I can be in a community of people that's like the music industry, and seeing how vendors were, and back then, obviously, and this, there wasn't a lot of events, and vending wasn't like a huge thing, but I compared it to being in a band. Like it was pretty much the same thing. You would create your products just like a musician would create a song, get your band together. pack it all up, go to the venue, set it up, perform, and then you pack it all up and you go to the next one. So I was like, I think I can do that because I already knew about all that. But it was just the mindset of, and especially at that time, Instagram wasn't really a thing for brands. And so it was just like, okay, I'm in Orlando. There's a few spooky events that I think I can do and just start it up and see, where it can go from there. And yeah, that was pretty much how it was born, drunk at HHN, and just kind of lit that fire and went from there.
I think that's fantastic. Do you have a favorite horror film or cult classic?
I think if you're talking about like cult classics, Return of the Living Dead is one of my favorites because it's that smaller budget mentality, but it's one of those films that I probably saw as like a teen or maybe as like younger, and I was just like, what is this? There's like comedy, there's horror, there's nudity, there's like there's all kinds of things routed in it. My favorite horror movie of all time though would probably be like a mix between either like Trick or Treat or Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think those two films and Scream, 96 Scream, those three. I'd have to say three, sorry. But those three right there all have played a major role in like my mind as far as development of just what I see in the horror industry and genre and what I love about Halloween and horror. So yeah, those three.
Do you have a hot take on, is there a film that people love that you think is overrated or you can't understand why it gets so much love?
Anything by Blumhouse. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, a lot of Blumhouse films, to me, it seems like they're just generically, put out for the mass audience. So those sometimes, I think the biggest thing is, the Conjuring films. I'm just not. I mean, the first one was pretty good. I'm just not a huge fan of that whole series and the Warrens in general. Once I watched a little bit of the documentaries about who they were and what they were doing, and you listen to some podcasts about who they were as people, I was like, this makes no sense why all these people like this film. It's very fictional. It's not real at all, or close to their real life. And so I'd probably have to say that whole series. I get that people like it, but it's just not for me. So.
No, and I like hearing that because sometimes people don't have that take. But what? So so you design everything when you design something as like a true fan. Like that's kind of the concept that you're coming
Mhm.
from like the subject of whether it's like movies, TV. You want them to be able to like feel proud of what they're wearing. I'm always intrigued by where you get your design inspirations from, and then like where do you keep them, like where, like how's that, how, give me some of that creative process. And obviously you could be drunk at Halloween Horror Nights and come up with ideas, but like on a typical, because you've been doing this for so long now, what's the,
Yeah.
how does it typically count, like kind of come the creative process?
Just like in music, I never really like abide by one like process that kind of works for all. I really just believe that there's times where I've put in a lot of effort into sitting and watching a movie and being like, okay, I know I love this film, but what can I take away that would work on a shirt? Because, and you know this too, like you can't just put like a design on a tee and make it work. Like it doesn't always happen. And sometimes the way that a shirt sits on somebody and whatnot. So I try to be very aware of all of that. But at the same time, there's just some things that will like hit me right in the face. Like I'll just like when I watched the movie X, like when she walked out of the strip club, like that whole like mural on the wall just hit me. And I was like, okay, that's gotta be it. And so sometimes it'll hit me, sometimes I'm in the shower and I'm just like all of a sudden I see something in my mind's eye where I'm like, oh my God, that would be a great idea for a shirt, and it has to do with the character that I really like. When I first started DOA, I wanted it to be nondescript, so I didn't really want people to know. Like it was like if you know, you know kind of thing. Like the whole no feet from Beetlejuice. It doesn't say Beetlejuice. It doesn't say Lydia. It doesn't say anything. It just says that, and so it was geared more towards the true fan. As I've gone down the road, I realized like sometimes you got to kind of you got to be on the nose about it and put it out there. And some films that are more cult classic, like an Ed Wood, you have a little bit more of a freedom to kind of put stuff on there. Because I think if you were too vague, nobody would get it, and they'd be like, "Yeah, don't see it, don't get it, move on." So yeah, it just depends. And then there's dry spells where I'm just like, I got nothing right now. But then I'll sit and watch a bunch of stuff, and something will hit me, and I'll be inspired. But No, you can always go back in the past. There's been so many movies that have come out that I love and still champion. And also the other benefit, which is, coming up on the 10 years, I mean, there's a bunch of shirts I put out in the first 5 years that nobody even knows exist. So, there's ways to kind of bring some new stuff back and maybe do something a little bit different, remix it a little bit and have something new.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I was going to ask about that because like especially the aspect of like the if you know type of thing where sometimes it's like that balance like I was really curious on how you handle that when it's like too niche versus being niche enough or at least spelling it out enough where it's like it plays to the crowd. It's kind of like a hard balance. Like how do you usually kind of balance that out? Because there's some things that you're like, this is what I love, but other people may be like, I don't get it, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, and then sometimes you're just like, I don't want to placate to like the trends or whatever, but it's like you got to play that balance because you are a business selling merchandise for something
Right.
that you love.
Yeah. I think the good thing, the way to be about it is just to have a good filter in your head. I mean, I'm gonna get to further on down the road, but the first thing that I do is I vet things so much. And I sit there and I learned that from, being in a band and being a musician, where like I'll beat a riff to death before I even bring it to the band to be like, hey, do you guys like this? So by the time it's gotten to them, I've already said, well, this is dumb. This works. This doesn't work. Well, let's try this 1,000 times in each different direction. With designing a shirt, it's a little bit easier because there's less option paralysis in a way because there's not, like if you're gonna do ghoulish mortals, it's obviously got to be purple or green, something that matches the haunted mansion. So you have the source material to kind of steer you in the right direction. And if you're kind of veering too far off left or right, you can always go back to it and be like, well, if I didn't really know what this was, and put yourself out of your own box because that's the hard part is we get stuck in this box. And I think the other thing too is to have a good maybe like one or two people that you can bounce things off of that you trust. Now, I say that, but also keep in mind, like, if you're very strong-willed about your idea and someone that you trust goes, I don't really like it, like, you don't have to listen to them. But it's always good to get that second opinion of like, well, how do they perceive it? Because they're not, again, as a designer or a musician or anything that's in a creative field, you get locked in and you're so driven and determined to do this one thing. But then when you're done with the process and someone looks at it and goes, I don't get it. It's like that scene in Mallrats where the guy's like, it's not a sailboat, it's a schooner or whatever. It's like, that's how I feel sometimes with some of this, where, some of these designs I've come out with and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a hit. And then everyone's like, yeah, no. And then the one that I was like, well, yeah, it's kind of on the nose. I don't know, if I like it as much as I like this or that or whatever. And then that's the one that sells the most, kind of thing. So.
And that's that I was, and it's funny that you say that because that was like going to be my next question was like, is there one that you, because I feel like every brand has like at least one or two designs that they loved and it just like did not hit. And sometimes I think it's not, and especially since we've been doing this so long, I sometimes think that it's one of those where maybe we were just ahead of our time is how I'm positively spinning it. But is there like a design that you like absolutely like, oh my god, this is gonna kill, this is gonna be amazing, and it just did not hit the mark at all?
Yeah, I mean, the one that I always kind of comes to mind, but I don't know if it was just time and place, maybe not so much the design. I did a design for Sinister, the movie that came out, and I think I did it in 22, so it was the 10-year anniversary because it had come out in 2012, and I put it out like kind of around the time that Black Phone was coming out because it was Derrickson and Ethan Hawke, and it just most of the time everybody would look at it and be like, "Is that a metal band?" Like they're like, because it looks, kind of like a metal band's design. But yeah, it didn't really. It's still kind of, I haven't brought it back out, and it just when it was out, nobody really got it. Everybody just looked at it and like, I don't know what that is, and I'm like, all right. So maybe, I don't think it was the design. I just think it maybe was a film that just wasn't really ready for some merch. I don't know, is the
No,
best way to put it.
no,
Um,
I get it, man. I totally get it, and I feel as though. And then, what has there been one that you're like, I can't believe this shirt is as popular as it is?
yeah, probably the no feet. I mean, well, I mean, I know why it's popular because it's Beetlejuice, but it was such a simple, easy, plain Jane design, and I did it because I was in a Instagram giveaway in 2018 and I didn't know what to do for Beetlejuice because everybody was doing Sandworms and Lydia, and all that. And I just wanted to be like that weird kid part of the group. And so, I did that, and it has just stayed popular for almost, well, 8 years now. And it's just it blows my mind that people are still like, yeah, that's rad, so but it's cool. I'm glad it is, and people still like it. So
One thing that I appreciate that you do, and you and I believe very much, is being present and doing stuff in person.
mhm.
I think there is something special to be. It's a lot of work, but there's something special about being able to do these events and go to events to see the people and all that. Can you talk a little bit about that importance of like going to events, and then and the fact of like what that brings for you to be able to sell at these events?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, like the crowded space online is only getting like there's more white noise every day, right? So like, as business owners, small business owners, we can sit there and we can stockpile a bunch of money to put into ads, but realistically speaking, we're competing with major brands that have way more money and they're gonna fill in the space. So for me, it was really important to get in front of people. And where we are, there's plenty of opportunities. And the other point of it is like from my retail work that I've done with, I mean, I've worked for the Miami Dolphins, Hot Topic, Ron John, Starbucks. And the one thing I've always learned my whole life, and it started with my dad, who ran a golf tournament in South Florida, is the networking and the connection, and just that vibe that you can give and get. And that's how the world works, as far as from business or anything, even in the music industry too. So these events for me was my chance, because online I didn't really want to be like, oh yeah, look at me, I'm Ryan, the owner of this company. Like, no, I wanted it to be about the fashion, the fan art, and the love of what I'm doing. Because again, like you said earlier, like I don't do stuff just because I go, oh, this is going to be a home run. Now, if I like a movie like Substance or Weapons or something, like I'll do it because yeah, I'm a fan too, and so I feel like it's perfect timing. Let me go ahead and do it. But I'm not going to do anything unless I really like it. And the whole goal of the online thing was to promote the fandom of it, and to find the people who were like me. And I didn't really want to just paste my face on there. So the way for me to get you to know who I am is to be in person. And these events, um, like any industry, you find a community of people who are like you. And I will say the Halloween, the horror, the community events around here in Orlando, like Milk Mart and stuff, they're just fantastic, man. Like you get to see real people. And the more that we keep going down, the road of we're living in this digital facade kind of thing, the more I think that's important. And also, two is you hear the stories, you hear what people like, you get to see what's trending and what's working for them, and people get to kind of communicate with you. So it's like you're gaining friends, you're gaining fans, you're gaining followers, and you're making money too. And for me, especially since I've worked at a mall, and you see the way the world is kind of going, these markets are where we're all kind of having communal experiences now. It's very rare that we have them anywhere else, sometimes, because everything's going digital and it's more we could just sit at home and do everything. So um
Yeah, there is something special about, and I the more I'm seeing it, the more I'm seeing us kind of become more analog, more in real world, in real life, kind of see people and actually interact with people. To me, also the fact, like you said, like there is so much white noise when it comes to online. Like it does. I will say that for me, a lot of times it actually is it's validating, because especially with us being something niche related, where it's like either you like it or you don't like it, but at least you find people, and the interaction of people and being able to see people actually do enjoy what you're doing. And maybe you're not getting all the online sales, but when you do to market, you do get that experience of that interaction and that communal aspect of it. And even and to me, even when I don't sell, sell something to someone, but I'm getting that interaction of them getting to know me, us talking about what we enjoy, like either it's a sandwich or a movie, that kind of thing, like kind of holds back, connects people, and then they go and tell someone else, oh my God, have you seen the brand, DOA? Like, it was funny. I went to I went and I think I may have taken a picture. I may not have taken a picture, but I was going to because I didn't want to sound. I didn't want it to be creepy. I was it was National Cheesesteak Day, and I went to an event, and I saw a guy wearing one of your shirts because you have it on like
Nice.
the back, the DOA, and I
Yeah,
was like, man,
yeah,
I'm like, I absolutely there's something about it. Like I absolutely love seeing like my friend or friends of like different brands that I'm like I've created relationships with because we go and we do similar events and we see each other enough where I'm like, man, I'm like, I love the fact that I'm like, and I always compliment people. I'm like, oh my God, I love your DOA shirt, or I love your, Seventh Ink, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's always like
yeah.
one of those type of things where I'm like, I just think it's so important. And I think it's very vital, especially when it comes to us as brands, to be able to kind of do these markets, even though it's a lot of work.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you know, again, like you said, it's great to see your stuff in the wild. It's great to see and that people are happy. And I feel like the best part about it is the like I've been mentioning is the community aspect of it. You get this good energy from people and you get to talk to people about stuff that you actually like. Like when I do an event and like you were saying, it's really tough. So let's take into consideration. All right, so if the event starts at noon, you got to be there at 10, but it takes 2 hours to get there. So put it in your head like, hey, I'm waking up at 6 a.m. The event gets done at 6. I'm not packed up till 7 or 8. It takes another 2 hours to get home, unpack, shower. So like that's like a 6 a.m. to like a midnight kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's so fulfilling when you get to meet people and your day of work is literally filled with, okay, you get to drive. Well, driving's not that bad because it gives you peace of mind. You get to get away from some stuff and think, listen to a podcast, do whatever it is you need to do. And then you get to talk to people all day about things that you like as opposed to like being somewhere else and just being miserable. Like I'm never upset at a hard day's work at an event. Now, you get the white knuckles from holding onto the tent because it's windy. You're raining and you're just going, oh my gosh. So yeah, I mean it's tough, but I think it's so rewarding to do this on so many levels. And again, like you say, when I go out and I see shirts of other friends, I mean it's so cool. It is. And I think the other thing too is like what we're creating is like one of one. We're not Walmart. So, you're not, if someone buys a shirt from you or me or, Murder on Main or whoever, it's like they're getting something so unique and original. And to me, I went to Catholic school my whole life, so I never had fashion. I just wore the same fucking thing every goddamn day. So when I got older and went into college, I was like, man, I could dress. I finally could I can wear all black finally because I'm a goth kid, Um, and so I love fashion. I love it in that respect to where every day, and not everybody does. Some people just will throw on whatever and wear whatever. But like, I love putting on a shirt and like knowing that I'm repping a brand or a movie or a band or something cool that gives me personality. It's got personality and it's also something that I really love. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's awesome. And, like I said, all the hardships I kind of just throw out the window and just be like, it could be worse, man. You could be back at Starbucks. So,
Exactly, exactly. And as someone who lived the same life as you in the sense of I went to Catholic, I went to like I wore the uniform. Like it's
yeah,
funny because like now when people say, "Oh, you're gonna get dressed up," I'm like, it's gotta be really special for me to get dressed up. Like now it's like I'm wearing jeans and a polo or jeans and a button up, and I'm like, maybe that's like my dressed up now. I'm like, there's not gonna
yeah.
usually be one of those. So no, I totally get it. Do you have any? I always like to ask people that especially since you guys do so many events, tricks, any tips or tricks that you think that like people either like when you since and like because I have a lot of my friends sometimes will be like, hey, I actually had one of my friends tell me recently like it would be really cool if like you and a bunch of others that like do a lot of events went around and actually gave people like almost like a reality show, like tent, like a makeover, in the sense of like, hey, these are some tips and tricks that you should do for your tent to help you kind of sell better. Is there anything that you feel like that people miss the mark or should be doing when they're selling at events that you kind of like? I mean, and granted, it's not like you have a lot of time to walk around because you're in your tent selling and you're at at an event. But have you noticed or seen anything that you're like, man, people really should consider doing this or do more of this because I feel like they're missing the mark when they're selling at an event?
Yeah, I think, well, one thing that I'm gonna do coming up soon, especially for outdoor events, has been that new trend where I see people having the hang sign on one of their poles, on their tent poles. which I've seen lately. And I really do think markets should make it almost mandatory for every business to have, because you could have the sign in the back and that works. But I like having those the signs out front because it's like a vendor village when you walk down. But that's just something that I've noticed recently as like trending that, and even I would need to get a sign. The one thing that I always recommend to people is decorate. Do like make your tent have personality and character because think about it, when you go to a market and every tent looks the same, what's separating you from somebody else? And the other thing too is I know a lot of us you build a tent from the inside, but go on the outside. See what it's like to walk from the left and walk from the right and come around the corner. And does your tent pop out? Like, is there anything standing out? Are certain things blocked in a certain way? As far as how the tables are arranged and whether people walk in your tent or it's front facing, that's up to whoever. I don't think that makes that big of a difference. Me personally, at 6 feet tall, I don't really like walking into people's tents because I feel like it's uncomfortable. Like I'm like gonna bang my head. So I've always stayed with the tent out. You can see everything with the product in, unless it's like raining or something and you got to turn them in. But my biggest piece of advice would just be just to decorate, give it personality. I mean, it's your little store. And at the end of the day, and I get it. I've seen a lot of vendors who are brand new or don't have a lot, and they just have like a table and like four things on it. It's like that's all you're selling. And I get that. Everybody starts somewhere, and I was like that too. But just, I mean, candles, flowers, any little thing that you have around at your home that you're like, yeah, this would go good. It gives that presentation because again, when you think about it from the customer's perspective, what are they seeing? Your first impression, it's like that saying, first impression's everything. So if they come up to your tent and, there's some decorations and everything fits a vibe and a theme and you clearly understand what's going on, it goes a long way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
No, you definitely do that really, really well. You have, and the
I
other thing
try.
I was going to say was that I think you do really well, and I think is so important is that you kind of have where there's the avenue of you being able to do everything from like your air fresheners to like stickers to like you have such a different assortment of product that there's things that people can be like, oh, I want to support DOA, so I'm like, I want to buy this. Like if, oh, I can't afford a t-shirt,
Hmm.
even though the t-shirts are great, I was like, maybe I'll buy one of these things, or I'll buy, and I think that's a really important thing to have when you're a brand, is to have the different tiers of people being able to like add, because those things add up together, not to mention also, and I think that's like super important. One thing I think that you realize, even more so in the sense of, and I was thinking about this more in the fact of like you understanding like, hey, I'm going out and I'm going to drive 2 hours and I'm going to do this. And it's almost like you doing a gig in a band. Like, that's kind of, which is for you is the same thing. It's like, hey, I need to get out and about and play my music, and people can see or hear and listen to my music so they can kind of do all that. You mentioned you currently right now in a new band, the Binding Divide. Tell me a little bit about how that kind of came about, and then how do you balance band, regular life, and also DOA work? Like how do you balance all that?
Yeah. So, to give you a quick story about the last question, though, the reason why I started to go more into depth as far as product, diversity. Well, obviously, I worked at Hot Topic, but I was doing an event, and this drunk guy, he literally came up to my booth, and he was like, because at this time I only had like two or three shirts, and I had all these handmade like kind of dolls and different things I was making at the time, like soaps and all the stuff that I was making in my house. And he was like, "Man, you need to get rid of all this crap. Like, I don't even understand what it is. Just stick with the t-shirts." And I was like, "Well." He's kind of right. So that's when I went more with the t-shirts, but I always knew having something like you said from like the dollar perspective to the highest price point in your tent helps everyone out because again people want to support, and once they kind of get to meet you and know you, because the other thing with buying a t-shirt online is like sometimes you go, what's the material? I don't know if the size is going to fit me. Does this work? Do I have to send it back? So there's a lot of shopper anxiety. So again, having more stuff available and a wide variety, I think does just allow people to kind of buy in a little bit more to your business. But getting to the band, so the Binding Divide's my new band. It was basically a combination of my last band was the Dev, and when that broke up after 6 years, I didn't start a new company. I was just like, okay, DOA is doing its thing. But let me, am I done? Am I ready to kind of just give up on being in the band? It's being a musician is probably the most thankful. I mean, I could tell you right now, it's just your back's up against the wall and you're pushing a boulder up a hill for the rest of your life kind of mentality. And I've been doing it for a long time. I've been in signed bands, unsigned bands. I've had a lot of success that most musicians never get to see, which has been awesome. But I still have that thing in my head where it's like, well, I tell myself if I'm not going to regret tomorrow never being on a stage again, it's time to stop. But then every time a band ends, I'm like, well, I think about it for a few minutes and I'm like, or a week or whatever, and I'm like, I'm not ready. So um, thankfully two of the guys from the dev, the bass player and the drummer, we had a phone call when that band broke up, and we were just like, "Are you done?" "No, I'm not done. Are you done?" Kind of thing. And so we stuck together. We put out a lot of ads for singers and got nothing, man. We went fishing and just was catching nothing. And it was lo and behold, we had an ad out on Bandmix from our previous band, the Dev, for a lead singer, because that band had gone through some member changes, and somebody answered it. And then when they answered it, we're like, okay, like, but just to let you know, the dev is done. This is a brand new project. It's a four-piece. It's still hard rock and metal. And we found someone who is driven, passionate, determined, and obviously has an extreme talent. Her vocals are just phenomenal. And so we started jamming together, started writing together, and then got into the studio when we felt comfortable, and then but waited. We I think we got together in March or April of last year, and we just released our first single in March of this year. So we took some time to really kind of build content, get to know each other, make sure it's not going to be like some kind of, flash in the pan. Oh, we're just, this is a rebound thing and whatever. And we wanted to create our world, of sophistication and music and art that we wanted to do. But yeah, juggling that now is tough because like running the social media, because I would say more so like, for DOA social media, it's kind of on autopilot. I know what I'm gonna post and what I need to post. And when you have events every week, it gives you the subject matter like, hey, I got a new shirt coming out, I got an event, so boom, I know what I need to talk about. With the band, it's the total opposite where it's like, hey, you want to pay attention to us because we got a new song? Next day, hey, you want to pay attention to me because we got a new song? So it's not necessarily social media anymore. It's social marketing is what I call Instagram. And that's most of social media. I'm not on Facebook. People go on Facebook to maybe communicate with family or whatnot. I'm just not that guy anymore. Um, so I love Instagram and I live on there, but I also teach guitar at a school one day a week as well and sub when I can. So it can be tough, but I think the beautiful part of both sides of the coin is they're both in the entertainment industry. They're both things that I absolutely love and adore. And rock and metal music, people generally tend to love horror and Halloween. So they kind of keep always like overlapping. And I can always, I could promote a little bit on, the band about DOA and vice versa. Like I'm going to vend a show in Clearwater and it's Bush and Mammoth. So it's a rock show, so I'll be there with that and I get to promote a little bit of both of my stuff. But sometimes it gets tough because I feel like one, it's like, well, if I don't get a design done, but I'm working on so much music, am I letting it slip? And then, the opposite where I'm like, all I'm doing is DOA. I want to go play guitar and write some music, So
Yeah.
it's just finding
Yeah.
that balance. And then my dog looks at me and goes, we need to go for a walk, dude. So it's like, it's
Do you
life.
have is there ever one of those while you're doing music or you're like a flip flop where it's like you're doing music and an idea of a design comes, or you're designing something and then like
Oof.
you just kind of like you're kind of like humming on, or you know what I mean, like it's something kind of comes and you're like, ooh, these are good lyric, or oh, this would be a
Yeah.
great riff or something.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's really, I mean, really, no, I think I put on the different hats and I kind of segregated in my mind and I go, when I'm doing DOA, I'm doing DOA. I mean, I'm always
Yeah.
cognizant of the band
Yeah.
and that I'm a member, but because again, at DOA events, I get people going, oh, I love the new single, or, I saw you when you were in this band. So that always works. But not really. Like they don't really influence each other. I mean, sometimes I'll watch like a movie like The Substance or something that has it's very musical as far as the score. So sometimes maybe some of that is subconsciously like influencing like a riff or something. But like in the Binding the Divide, I don't write any of the lyrics. Our singer does. So I write, the music, guitars and riffs and stuff like that. So yeah, and again with writing music, I don't prescribe to anything as far as a formula. So if it hits me, I used to dream in music where I would like play music as I
Really?
was going to sleep and I'd wake up and I would hear like songs in my head and I'd be like, ah, I gotta figure out what I was doing. Yeah, when I was a kid, like I didn't hate school, but I was very, I think I was just I always like looked out out the window and was like, ah, there's something better I could be doing, than sitting here trying to learn math or something. So I used to listen to my favorite bands, like records and stuff, so I could repeat them in my head. So when I was bored in school, I would just be playing songs. And this was while I was learning guitar. And I mean, I started playing music when I was 5. So music has been the number one thing in my life probably since I can remember. It's just so important. It's just conveys so much for me. Um, but yeah, I feel like they do subconsciously probably, overlap, but
Yeah, they
nothing like
overlap.
that.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
definitely
it's
a creative outlet of how you of a form of expression and all of that. In all your years doing music, because I like and I appreciate like some of the stuff, like because for my research and everything, like you've done work, like you've traveled the world to
yeah,
playing music.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
there like a memory, or is there like a lasting memory that you kind of like, man, like this was awesome, this like one experience that maybe you got to do from performing and doing music?
Yeah, I think one of them was when I was a hired gun for this signed artist, and we which is my wife. So if you've met Lennon, that's who I'm
Yeah.
talking about. But when I first met her, and we were on tour, we played Pittsburgh, and we were on the Warp Tour, and we were like headlining the main stage that day. Well, not headlining, but we were the opener on the main stage that day. And like we had been playing on these side stages, and that was the one day where Kevin Lyman was like, "All right, you guys are playing main stage." And it was just one of those moments where, 10 years before that, I just started playing guitar. And Pittsburgh's where my dad's from, so I had cousins there. I had a lot of family, and it was that moment where like everything hit me, and I literally just started playing in bands 2 years ago, or like in 2001 or whatever, and here we are, it's 2004, and I started playing guitar 10 years ago, and I'm standing on the main stage of Warp Tour about to play in front of this massive crowd. Like, how did I get here? You know what I mean? It was just like, what the fuck? Like, and again, with music and with anything, it's right time, right place, and who you know, and the networking of things. So it just felt like one of those moments where I was just like, man, whatever I did, the energy has just like, or the universe has sent me this energy and these vibes and this like, it just put me on this path to be right here, right now. And I've been lucky enough to play. I mean, Welcome to Rockville, Louder Than Life, go to Hong Kong, play Wild Day Out. I mean, I've done a lot, like I've said. So, but that's the moment that always stands out in my head where it was just like me thinking like, oh my God, 10 years ago, I was this 14-year-old kid, like just dreaming of this moment right here, right now. I'm here, I'm there. So
No, man, that's awesome. And speaking of the universe, amazing segue, by the way. I like to ask my guests, what do they want to put out into the universe? So what do you want to put out into the universe for you, DOA, as well as also the Binding Divide? What do you got for me?
yeah, so for me personally, right, and this has nothing to do with DOA and the
Yeah.
Binding Divide, but my biggest thing that I want to put out in the universe for the most part is just people being happy, man. And I hate to use this phrase, but live deliciously. Like the world's so full of, division, and the world is so full of negative, crap every day that you see on TV, and there's no reason why each and every one of us shouldn't be happy and living a life that listen, it's not always going to be roses and cupcakes. We get that, you know what I mean? Like trials and tribulations happen, but I've always been the person who believed that like passion is your purpose and fear is a motivation to push you towards that passion. And I've come up with all these phrases in my life, and that's one of them. But like, I just we're only on this earth for a short time, you know, and I had a huge medical scare a few years ago that could have ended my life and should have probably for all intents purposes. And it really helped me refocus on to that where it's like, what are we doing? Why are we fighting with everyone? Like, what are we so upset about? There's no reason we could just, you need to be happy in life to enjoy it. As far as DOA, my biggest thing, like I said, is to have something for someone who's just a fan like me of something, whether it's horror, Halloween, Tiki, cult classic, but have something that you tangibly see and you just enjoy. And whether it's a shirt that makes you feel good that it's on your back, or a sticker on your car, or air freshener, or whatever that you truly enjoy, it just gives you some sort of happiness in the day. Now, granted, the subject matter is macabre and it's dark, but that's how I am. Like I was that goth kid at the beach, skimboarding and surfing, but dressed all in black. That's just who we are, kind of thing. And the same thing with the Binding Divide, with the music. As a musician in making stuff, and this also applies to DOA, I make the shirts and the music and the songs that I like. So first and foremost, if I don't like it, if I'm not gonna wear it, if I don't think it's cool, it's not coming out, So you can already know that, like, at least I thought it was cool. If you don't think it's cool, then, that's okay. Like we have differences of opinions. But so I'm doing stuff just because I feel like I personally truly love what's happening. And with the music, I just want people to feel something. Like I said, past this digital facade of the world that we live in, and get back to losing yourself in the moment of a musical journey. And music is our soundtrack to our daily life, whether it's sad music, happy music. Music is such an important thing, and it creates these timelines and points throughout your journey that you're able to kind of like go back to, and you can interact with music. I mean, I always tell people, for me, music is the ultimate like artistic medium, because you can watch the artist who created it recreate it with you live. You can't do that with a painting. You can't, and when you watch theater, it's like you're not watching the guy who wrote the dialogue, write it. You're not in his head. But with music, you're there with that musician recreating it with you, and you can interact with it and scream and yell and enjoy. So, for the Binding Divide is, obviously we're doing our thing, and I just want people to feel something like the way that I felt when I was 14 and listen to my favorite record. And that's all I needed in the day, was to look up and see a clear blue sky and hear that song, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So yeah, that kind of breaks it down.
I love it. By the way, I may be reaching out to you to talk to you to talk to you about somehow working on you and I, because Live Deliciously is that is like, if that's not my brand or part of my brand,
It
there's got
is.
to be something that we can maybe do, like a collab where there's someone that you think could work on that and they would at the same time blend with mine, or even just something you and I can work on. Because I was like, man, I'm like, holy crap, I'm like, that's a good one. I'm like
Yeah.
he's just dropping all these good nuggets here. So
Well, and
that's a
and
good one.
yeah, I mean, it comes from a film, but at the same time, it's one of those things too where, like, I just, and doing so many events, you hear so many stories from people. And, my biggest hope for anybody whoever comes by DOA or listens to the Binding of Isaac, I just want you to be happy. Like I said, like, I just want you to have a good life and enjoy your time here, because it is so very limited, And so, and it's tough to hear, negative stories, and when things are people going. But that's why I put out the Live Deliciously as a remix. What was it, this year or last year? Where I was just like, you know what? I want people to get that in their minds. Like, just live deliciously, treat yourself, Like, it doesn't always have to be, put in the work. I'm not saying like it's all hedonistic and you should never, work hard for anything, but, you know, take the time to take a deep breath, stare at the clouds and just enjoy what's around you for like 5 seconds.
I love it, man, and I agree with that. That's one of the reasons. And it's funny because you mentioned it, like sometimes your dog tells you, hey, let's go, we got to go for a
Yeah.
walk. Like, to me, those are like my moments, being able to go for a walk and just kind of like just take it in and be able to see it. So I totally get that. What advice do you have for someone wanting to start something?
I think the biggest advice is don't get in your own way. Um, you know, don't, like I said, don't be afraid to just put things out there. It's not going to be great. It may not be the greatest thing that you're ever going to make at the beginning. You may love it, but eventually you're going to find your way. I think most people at the very beginning, they just kind of get in their own way, and just do it. Just start it now. Don't wait till tomorrow. Okay.
Where can people follow you? Where can they shop? Where can they listen to your music? Where can they follow you and support you?
Yeah, absolutely. For Instagram with DOA, it's at DOA underscore CO underscore. And then with the Binding Divide, it's just at the Binding Divide. And the Binding Divide is everywhere, all streaming services and whatnot, YouTube, all that good stuff. And then the DOA store is doaco.storeenvy.com. So just type out DOACO, and yeah, and then you can find my personal on there. Eventually, I post something on my personal page. So if you want to follow my personal, it is what it is. It's just mostly guitar stuff and reposting and all that. But I'm always there to say hey. And yeah, I think that covers just about all of them. I'm not big on the TikTok kind of thing yet, but
I totally get it, man. I actually just started a TikTok for the podcast because I had so many people tell me they're like, you should really think about doing a TikTok. And I was like, no,
yeah.
like I already have the reels on Instagram. I might as well use them on TikTok as well and see what we can do. And so no, man, I totally get it. I always love being able to see you and Lennon at events whenever I get to go, whenever we bump in, and you do so many events. You guys, would you say you're probably every weekend you're going somewhere for the most part, or where are
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, at this point, it's every weekend now, yeah, for the most part. If I can. Obviously certain weekends with holidays and stuff, you kind of there's just nothing going on, but I like to stay busy. So,
What's the furthest you've traveled for an event?
the furthest I've ever traveled, well, prior to COVID, I was going to like Charlotte and Charleston and I've been up north a little bit, but the last couple years I've stayed primarily around Florida. My cutoff is Jacksonville as far as needing a hotel. So like I will travel anywhere, day traveling kind of thing, Gainesville there and back. But once you get to Jacksonville, it's like you kind of have to get a hotel because it's never 2 hours. They always say it's 2 hours, but it's always further. And then anything in Southeast Florida, my parents still live down there, so I usually will just stay with them because I mean, like Broward County or Dade County would be a 3 or 4 hour drive, and that's a little much. Um, but like I said, I tried it to get around as much as I can, and Florida, there's a lot of events happening, so it's a great state to be in.
Yeah,
So
man, it definitely hits, and you do a heck of a job with it, and you're always everywhere. Ryan, again, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate you spending some time with me and getting to talk with me a little bit. That's our show for today. Thank you so much to Ryan Danley of DOA and of the Binding Divide, and for being on and talking with me. I love being able to see them and interact with them. Some of your stuff is coming, like, I feel like, it's almost like, I don't know if you feel this, but I feel like, I've known you for a while, but like I feel like you've kind of had like this stride of like, you're just like, it's just kind of, I don't know if you feel that, like as you get to 10 years, is like fine wine, like you're just getting better and better at what you're doing. And I think it's awesome, man. I really do. I think you're doing a heck of a job, and I love it. And so I really appreciate you, for you being on. If you want to definitely shop online, check them out. If they're out of market, at an oddities or anything like that, you definitely go see them and go buy something from them. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe, make sure to tell your friends. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.
thank you.